the Seebe school was there, and as I said earlier, my mom had gone to it as a little girl in grade 5 and grade 6. So it probably had been built in the 1911, 1912, 1913.
There was a school that was actually up closer to Horseshoe, I think, back then. We did some investigation into the school that we remember when we were trying to figure out the anniversary date, remember?
Okay.
And that said that what we were able to find out said that that school had been built in 1918.
18. Okay,
Yeah.
1918. Well, that would make sense then, because Mom was born in 1913, and she was in grade 5. So she would ride into
Yes.
where the school currently is now. So there was a school there, a big part of the ambiance of Seebe, 2-story duplex, and then 4 other duplexes.
Was there 3 or 4?
I think
Three
it was
other
3
duplexes.
cottage
Three
duplexes
yeah.
Initially.
Yeah.
And then I believe when I was about grade 6, they built, engineered homes came in and built 6 houses. 3 at one end
And 3 at the other.
of Seebe, 3 at the west end, and 3 at the extreme east end of Seebe itself. And then after we were married, the other houses by the
Between,
superintendent's house and sort of behind, underneath the
Railway
hill,
tracks,
underneath the railway tracks. They built 4 more houses in there. So actually, that's how it expanded.
And
One
then
room-
eventually the 3 more homes right
What-
down closer to the Ball
but
Diamond
the
where
3
Grace and
next
Alan
to
live.
the...
Oh, that's right, yes.
Next
That
to
was-
the staff house,
Yeah.
there was 3 there.
That
that
were
were
Grace and
later.
Alan lived.
No.
No?
Foreigners and Abelseths and Ketchens lived in those 3. They
3,
were built
yeah.
after those first
Right
6.
beside the garage that was
Yes.
between there and the
And
staff
the other-
house.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
after I left
Yeah.
that, yeah. And
Then the
the
other 2, and then there was 3 newer ones. The 2 your mom and dad lived in one, and we lived in one, right behind the superintendent's house.
superintendent's house.
Yeah.
And then Mom and Dad moved into the superintendent's.
Yes,
The
yeah.
superintendent's house, in my mind, had been there for absolutely years. It had a beautiful veranda at the front that was a glassed-in veranda, beautiful hardwood floors.
It had a veranda at the back, not a closed-in
Not
veranda.
it was an open veranda at
yeah.
the back.
And a fireplace.
And a fireplace
The only house in
inside.
Seebe that
Yeah.
had a fireplace.
Yeah.
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 So Mom and Dad moved into that after my husband and I were married in '63. The staff house, I can't remember. The 51 in my mind seems to be 1951, when the staff house itself was built underneath the railway tracks there at the bottom of the hill. The curling rink had gone in 47 or 48, I believe. Then there was an outdoor skating rink that the dads used to flood all the time. So
The original one was behind the curling rink, and then they...
That's
and
right.
the
Eventually it
beautiful
went-
big new...
went
yeah,
east of the
yeah.
curling
Went
rink.
east
It
of
was,
the
it was
curling
very
rink.
small, the one at the back, but...
Yeah. And the extreme east end of Seebe had a natural rock outcropping that contributed to the fact that we felt it was our workshop. So, that would be a real big place for all of us to play.
Playground to play.
Playground, the east end of Seebe, just underneath the road that went to Horseshoe.
I
Seebe store was a big part of the community. It was about a half a mile away.
And when I was a child, Horseshoe, there were still a couple of houses there, as we
Yes,
were
yeah.
discussing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was actually the original community, because the Horseshoe Dam was built in 1911 before the Kananaskis Dam. And so that was where the community was. And
Mm-hmm.
then when did they build the Kananaskis Dam?
1913.
Okay.
1913,
Yeah, so
yeah.
then
You're
with
very
those
good at
two,
remembering things, Pat. Very
with
good
those
at that.
two farther apart, then the community of Seebe that we remember started to grow up in between the two plants. So But what happened initially when they closed it down, everything was still there, but there was nobody there anymore. And then a couple of years later, they sold a lot of the newer bungalows to a company that took them off the foundations and took them somewhere in southern Alberta to refurbish them.
Down
And
by
then-
Brooks
yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And then they would resell, and we've heard that some of those homes ended up actually in Waterton Park as staff housing.
And to get
There
them out
was-
of that area.
There was
An original road.
a road, which was probably the original road into Seebe, because the Trans-Canada Highway
Oh, and it
wasn't
came-
there then.
yeah.
And so it's just out, just a little bit west of the Kananaskis plant and the shop there. And it went out across the railway tracks and across the
That's how we used to get to the
reserve.
Trans-Canada
Yes,
Highway.
yeah.
Yep.
So,
Staying on the east side of the Kananaskis
East side.
River.
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's how they got them out, and of course they had to get special permits from the people on the reserve as well to go across that land. And the only bungalows that they didn't do that with were the 3 at the east end of town, because at that time the people who had bought the land had only bought the eastern side of it, where the town site actually wasn't sold originally because there was some issues about the ownership and things like that. But there was a straight line that went through, and so those 3, like Annie Helen
And
Mom and
and
Dad's
Uncle Ross's,
original house, yeah.
So those,
George and Reed Cole had
Yeah.
George Reed Cole and
Yeah.
then
so
my mom
those
and
ones
dad.
down there stayed because when they were talking about developing a little community up in the pasture, they were thinking that those homes could be used as housing for some of the people who were working there. So they didn't go. The cottage duplexes had already been demolished in the 80s sometime. But the 2-story duplex was still there, and the school.
And there was the teacherage too.
And
that
the
they built.
teacherage was still there, and then the staff house, and the curling rink, and the superintendent's house. But all of the other bungalows had been
Gone.
moved out at that point. And then unfortunately, the company that had bought the land towards Horseshoe didn't own that land yet, and TransAlta didn't really have a reason to stay interested in it, and so things were kind of let go, and eventually became very decrepit. They were badly vandalized, actually. I think there were kids coming to have parties there and so on, and so things got tagged, all that, artwork. And so it was kind of sad to see. There was a real dissolution that happened there. And but I'm an avid amateur photographer, and I spend a lot of time still going down to Seebe through all those years. And so I've got a fairly good photographic record of what
compile it into a
happened.
book.
And I should do something, make a photo essay or something with it. And so having grown up mostly in that 2-story duplex, and it being one of the buildings that was still there, it was sad, but going through that process over several years, I was saying to you girls earlier, it really helped me work through the process of seeing my hometown disappear off the face of the map, because I started to realize that much as the buildings had been Seebe, that really one of the big things about Seebe was the landscape. It's one of the most beautiful parts of the Bow River, I think, and that's still there. And the other thing was our community of people, our family, really.
Yes.
And even though Seebe's gone, we still have that. We're all still in touch, and so that really helped me work through that and get over some of the sadness of seeing it go.
I think when the Canadian Rockies school division in Canmore decided that the enrollment of students going into that little one-room school in Seebe was not going to be sufficient to warrant keeping it open. That was one of the contributing factors to families with children moving out. And I can't quite remember the date, but I'm thinking it would be 1993,
That the school
1994
closed,
that the
yes.
school actually closed.
Yeah.
And
And at that point, there were only 12 students there, I think.
yes,
Yeah.
I think maybe
Grades 1 to 6.